Well, this is our first hybrid video for the semester. It is August 31st, and today I want to talk a little bit about the Hundred Years' War. I have uploaded on your Canvas a course module that says August 31st, and I'll link this video to it. I'm going to upload this to my YouTube channel, and it'll be there. And so when you go to your August 31st class, you'll see a dynastic chart. You'll see a article that talks about the 10 most important weapons of the Middle Ages. I also put the movie The Messenger about Joan of Arc on there. Now I'm going to give you two choices here. I do want you to start the movie at the 1 hour mark and look at the battle scenes, look at how everything goes through, the warring, and look at medieval weaponry as you watch this. So I will take questions from that part and put them on the quiz. I will also upload an extra credit worksheet that if you want to watch the movie from beginning to end, because it really deals with a very important issue of not only the 100 Years' War, but also the role of the Catholic Church and burning Joan of Arc as a heretic. And so I will give you that extra credit assignment to do over the weekend. But when we're talking about the 100 Years' War, if you look on your dynastic chart, you will see that we have two thrones, and one is the Valois of France, and the other is the Plantagenets of England. And so when we are looking at these thrones, we talked about Philip IV in class the other day. We talked about how he took on the Pope. We talked about he taking on the Knights Templar. Philip the Fair, or Philip IV, is such an important person to start this era with. And it is because of Philip IV that we will see the 100 Years' War. He doesn't start it, but he does put things in motion that cause it. And so one of the things we see is that Philip's three sons, Louis X, Philippe V, and Charles IV, all die very quickly. But his one daughter, Isabella, he marries off to the King of England. Now, this was very common, to marry your daughters off to your enemies, to cement alliances and things like that. I'm sorry, Edward II of England. Their son is Edward III. So Isabella marries Edward II, and they have a child, Edward III. And it's this problem: who gets to be King of England in France? Because Isabella is the last heir of Philip IV, but she's a girl, and she's married to the English king. And so Edward III believes that he is the rightful heir to the French throne because France has Salic law. Salic law says a woman cannot inherit the throne. And so when you look at this idea of a woman can't inherit, but her husband can, so Edward III, her son, believes that he should be the rightful heir to the throne. But we forget that if you go up the dynastic chart to Philip III, Philip IV's father, he had another son, Charles of Valois. So when do second sons get to inherit? This is one of those problems where do you inherit do you go back up the dynastic line to a second or third or fourth son who has male heirs, or do you go through the first son who only has female heirs? And Edward III is the legitimate grandson of Philip III and Philip IV. He's the great-grandson of Philip III, grandson of Philip IV. He's legitimate. His claim to the throne is legitimate. But the Valois also believe that they are the legitimate heirs. And so this is what sets off the 100 Years' War. By the time we're all said and done, everybody that started this is dead. So it really doesn't matter. 100 years later. But also the role of the Catholic Church we discussed in class the other day. The idea of the Catholic Church and the role the French have with it. And so the Catholic Church is going to side part of the time on the side of the French and part of the time on the side of the English. And you have to realize most of the 100 Years' War is fought in France. And it will lay waste to the French countryside for decades. And so this becomes very problematic because at some point we can't even crown the king late in the war because the English hold that part of France. And so as we progress through the 100 Years' War, the initial war loses its meaning, and now we are fighting just to fight. And the fighting is brutal and nasty and mean and ugly, and you have a lot of cool weapons that you'll see in The Messenger. And so that's why I chose this movie. The movie's kind of old, but it's got some strange parts in it. But it does show the brutality of warfare. The other thing it shows, and I'll talk about this in the second video, is the Catholic Church and witchcraft. And so we'll save that for the next video. I'm going to kind of upload these in small bits so that you don't have to watch them all at once. When we are looking at the 100 Years' War, we don't really have clear victories at any set point enough to stop the war, to say this is a victory and you have won and I've lost and things like that. So what we do have is I win this battle, you win this battle, I win this battle, you win this battle. And it becomes just a slugfest. We also see a pattern that starts in the 100 Years' War that will carry through much of European history. And that is, we start a fight, we fight 3 or 4 or 5 years, we stop, we have a truce, or we just both pull back, or kind of to do a staging area and stop for a few years and then start again. This pattern of warfare we will see through this whole semester of stop, start, stop, start. So where in American history we would go, well, this was this war, kind of like we do. World War I is here and World War II is here. And Europeans don't do that. They look at the bigger picture. And so we will fight 2 100 Years' Wars this semester. We'll start with this one and we'll finish with the second 100 Years' War. And so keep that in mind of stop, start, stop, start. One is you have to have money. Weaponry is going to change. Strategy is going to change. Things like that. But also kings change. And so as we go back and forth between the two of them, we see this problem. Okay? The British do the English, do a very good job of the longbow changes the course of the 100 Years' War easily. The longbow becomes so important that it becomes the only game allowed in England. All other sports will be suspended, and they'll reward marksmen for their ability to use the longbow. But the longbow only works at distances. It doesn't work in hand-to-hand combat. And so you'll still see the crossbow and things like that. And the other problem is the use of gunpowder. And when I went to West Point on Friday was Armory Day. I was there for 7 weeks studying the art of military science. And every Friday we did weapons. And we started with the slow match musket. And so you're going to see with gunpowder, we're going to see the creation of these muskets that, let me tell you, trying to fire this thing was a pain. you had to have this oily rag that you lit to light your gunpowder. You had to put a mini ball or some sort of round thing in the musket to fire it to shoot out. I mean, it was very rudimentary. How these things didn't explode or, blow up in your face, I don't know. I just thought it was the dumbest thing I ever fired. I mean, it was pretty cool. Um, but it was really problematic. And so when you look at muskets, you have this problem of you have to have fire. You have to have some sort of ignite, some sort of spark. You had to keep your gunpowder dry. You had to, gunpowder is very unstable. Storing it became very problematic. They learned that you had to store it in very small barrels. But also it's very, 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 very expensive. And so, and the trying to create gunpowder actually adds to a new science that's coming along, alchemy, which will later be called chemistry. But trying to create gunpowder will add to that new field of science. And so the Hundred Years' War is really innovative in many ways, but we'll talk a little bit more about it in the next video, and we'll talk about some other things. Okay, thank you.